Okay, so the Eagles made a couple impressive hires and it should help the defense, but now there's this crazy report out there sharing just how close the Birds were to bringing in Belichick as their head coach, plus all the action from the Senior Bowl and why Howie Roseman may be setting his sights on a corner. AJ Brown's about to break silence, but what's this ridiculous talk about trading for Patrick Surtain? So let's talk about it, but first, let's run it. What's up, guys? So let's start with a couple Pro Bowl updates since after the Niners beat the Lions, it opened up a couple spots, with Jalen Hurtt now replacing Brock Purdy and Darius Slay filling in for Charvarius Ward, where they'll take part in the
Hey, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Okay, well then let's talk about a different bowl. Unfortunately, it's not the Super Bowl, but the most important one for Philly is now the Senior Bowl, with a number of different prospects taking part in drills, one-on-ones, and team sessions. Not gonna lie, I love this time of year, figuring out who's gaining momentum and creating buzz ahead of the draft. And one dude who left everyone feeling similar to Fran Duffy was Toledo's cornerback Quinyon Mitchell, after making several plays on the ball and looking like a no-doubt first-rounder.
I'm trying to dominate, you know what I'm saying? You know how I go, group of five, power five, you know what I'm saying? They want to see who, you know what I'm saying? So it's better competition here, so I just want to compete.
Is there any couple players in the league that you currently study or that you have studied that you kind of take techniques, things from what the coverage?
I mean, I watch a lot of football. I like Darius Slay, you know what I'm saying? He play a lot of off, you know what I'm saying, and press, and then press Pat Surtain, you know what I'm saying? I feel like he's real patient at line, big and long, and can run like me. So
what is it about Slay's game that you gravitated to?
Just off man, you know what I'm saying, press man, and then he's been doing it for a long time. I mean, I think next year gonna be year 11, so playing at a high level for a long time. So yeah.
You got a chance to talk to him at all?
Nah, I want to meet him though. Yeah, I want to meet him. So yeah.
Well, he might get to because the Eagles sound like they're just as excited to meet him as he is for them.
Yeah, I met with the Eagles too.
Okay, obviously they're doing their due diligence, going to meet with a ton of different potential candidates. By the way, shout out to Joe Castro for the fire content, and we're going to have Joe on soon to recap all the Senior Bowl and everything else, so stay tuned. But speaking of Mitchell, he's a dude to definitely keep your eye on, and he has strong ties to the Birds since his head coach Jason Candle and defensive coordinator played in college with Nick Sirianni at Mount Union, which is great, but the bigger reason I want this dude is because he can clearly be a lockdown corner, with Dane Brugler saying Quinyon's making the case as the top defensive player at the Senior Bowl. Obviously not super surprising for those of you that have been following him, since the 6', 196-pound corner is without a doubt one of the most athletic DBs in the draft, with an unreal knack for making a play on the ball, racking up 37 pass breakups over the last 2 years, including 4 INTs, with 2 of them returned for pick sixes in the game versus NIU. Along with scouts' reports of possessing patience and competitiveness to frustrate opposing wide receivers. Oh yeah, this dude's also got 4.3 speed. Now, in case you're wondering, does this dude have a weakness? Maybe, with Fran Duffy saying legitimately one of the only gripes you could have with him is that he didn't play a lot of press coverage in college, an extremely low 5.4% of his reps. But honestly, that's probably not a problem since Fangio doesn't go with a lot of press coverage anyway. I know, as much as we all hate that sometimes. Either way, he could probably learn it if he wanted him to. I'm just excited that Philly's showing interest in a big-time corner. Or fine, if you're not sold on him, how about Bleeding Green Nation's first mock draft taking Georgia cornerback Kamari Lassiter? I mean, it does feel like how he leans this route with his bias towards them Georgia dudes, but I wouldn't blame him with Lassiter because he's a straight dog. Like in 2023, the 6', 180-pound sophomore allowed a grand total of 9 receptions for 91 yards and 0 touchdowns as the closest defender in coverage. Yeah, that's literally all. Plus, the guy's got impressive physicality and isn't afraid to come up and lay a hit on the wide receiver. Of course, sure, there's higher ranked corners in the class, but it feels like these are the 2 main ones who might still be available for the Eagles to take at 22. Or heck, let me know what you guys would go with at that spot if you're not going with either of these 2 options. I guess I couldn't blame you if you decided to go with the unanimous winner of day 1 from the Senior Bowl in Oregon center Jackson Powers Johnson. Talk about putting on a show. The 21-year-old was burying defensive linemen in reps and certainly lived up to the hype, saying afterward, "I'm the best center in the draft. I'm going to bet on myself 10 times out of 10.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal."
It's not really a surprise that the 6'3", 334-pound freak was compared to Richie Incognito for having a nasty physicality. And kudos to David from the Philly cover corner for sharing that he has a wrestling background which has helped a number of linemen in the NFL. He also showcased some ideal versatility inside during practice, lining up at left guard and right guard. So despite whatever you've thought about JPJ before, Jordan Reed had him as the best player on the field for the national team, with a strong anchor and clearly possessing great athleticism for the run game as well as the pass game. Naturally, with all of that, it kind of depends on whether or not Jason Kelce returns. Oh yeah, there's also Cam Jurgens, I guess. But actually, that's not as big of a deal because look at Landon Dickerson, who was originally going to replace Kelce and then moved over to become a really good left guard. All right, even though Jurgens did okay at right guard, personally, I feel like he needs to move to center to maximize his full-time potential. But it's not the worst thing to have 3 guys who could slide in when needed, and Jackson Powers has more size, so it feels like he'd go to right guard if he went that route. However, with all that being said, and after watching this entire last season, I'm going to be severely disappointed if we go with offense instead of the defense for our first-round pick. But how about you? Is there a world where you see this making any sense? How about a world with Bill Belichick as the Eagles head coach? Since according to Bleeding Green Nation, Jeffrey Lurie was very interested in the Pats man had Sirianni not been open to coaching changes.
Probably the most interesting thing that I've heard, and again, this is just Senior Bowl rumor mill, is that the Eagles were very interested in Belichick if things didn't work out with Nick Sirianni, and they could be at the front of the line if things again go poorly for him next year.
Well, so didn't things not work out with Nick Sirianni? Like, what does that mean? They got blown out in the first round.
Yes, but, similar to Doug Peterson, like Doug Peterson was coming back until he had that postseason meeting with Howie and Jeffrey Lurie, and they wanted Doug Peterson to do certain things, fire certain people, and he wouldn't do it, so he got fired.
I see.
Apparently, Nick Sirianni was amenable to all that stuff, so they decided for one more year that they're going to keep him. But I do think, remember I told you guys that before the end of the season that teams had already reached out to Bill, back-channeled on Bill. I thought the Falcons were definitely one of them. I'm now pretty convinced that the Eagles were the other one. When things were going south, they thought this might end poorly with Sirianni, and I wouldn't be surprised, given the relationship that Howie and Bill have, that the Eagles were one of those teams to back channel through Bill.
Okay, I don't know about you, but we dodged a bullet because as much as I kept saying I didn't want Sirianni around, Bill Belichick would have been worse. You remember Matt Patricia, don't you? And I'm not sure any of us would have signed up for Josh McDaniels as the OC. By the way, if you haven't subscribed yet, do me a favor and hit that sub button, because if you think this is crazy, there's going to be things like this coming out all offseason long. And then, of course, there's this whole idea of a Patrick Surtain trade with fair-weather Jack Fritz suggesting the Birds should trade A.J. Brown for PS2.
Get poop mouth! Get poop out of your mouth!
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Look, I get that AJ's been the center of Philly media attention, plus Howie Roseman's been linked to Surtain on multiple occasions, even blocking San Francisco from trading for him during the deadline, but you're not getting rid of one of your best offensive weapons. I don't care how good of a corner he is. Seriously, does anyone think this is a good idea? Oh, by the way, it's at least worth pointing out that AJ won't be playing in the Pro Bowl due to the knee injury that he is recovering from, but no official word on exactly how serious that injury is. Although AJ and Devonta will join the Up and Adams show, so maybe we'll get an answer then. Again, we need help on the defense, but not sacrificing AJ to do it. And while we're on the topic of defense, the Birds have shown some interest in Myles Murphy. Wait, no, not that Myles Murphy from Cincinnati. This Myles Murphy from Carolina, who the Eagles reportedly have an eye for at the Shriners Bowl. And in case you're not as familiar with him, Murphy is a 6'4", 300-pound defensive end who recorded 24 tackles and 1 sack in 13 starts with the Tar Heels. Ultimately not a big name, but someone I could see Howie taking a flyer on with one of our 4 fifth-round picks the Birds have. And Clint Hurtt would love that, who, by the way, as you probably know by now, is the official D-line coach under Vic Fangio, having previously coached with him in Chicago as the linebackers coach, but more recently, Hurtt was the defensive line coach and then defensive coordinator in Seattle, where his change to the 3-4 helped lead an improved pass rush for the Hawks, increasing from 34 sacks in 2021 to 45 sacks in 2022, which tied for the 7th most in the NFL, and then he also proceeded to up that to 47 this past season. As a DC, it didn't really work out for Hurtt's unit, ranking in the bottom third of the league in points per game allowed. However, this move to reunite with Fangio makes a lot of sense. And as we all saw, as well as one NFC executive source pointed out last season regarding the Eagles' D-line, there was too much talent there to fall off the table like they did. There were too many examples of players getting off the ball poorly and getting pushed back. The technique and discipline weren't there consistently enough. But I think we're going to see a drastic improvement because he focuses on technique and he can coach up the players to better understand a Fangio scheme.
All right. I talked yesterday about us having a foundation. There are some alerts and things as a defense that we have to be aware of, or some issue plays, all right, that are going to show up. All right, so that way you guys just see how these things are going to be blocked when we're lined up like so. Everybody good? Any questions? Excellent. Here we go. We'll get this on you guys' iPad too. All right, let's go, man. Let's have a hell of a day.
Honestly, if it all goes south, we could probably just ask Hurtt to suit up. The other hiring to point out is Karl Scott, who will presumably take over in a senior role with the secondary as experience continues to be the theme for coach hiring. And Scott has that via 14 years coaching defensive backs and spending time in the NFL and college ranks, with understanding and teaching coverage mechanics being his calling card. And like Outside the Birds pointed out, with him coaching Trayvon Diggs, Patrick Surtain, Jordan Battle, Brian Branch, and many others, it'll be interesting to see if he can pull them over to Philly. Although Xavier McKinney could be the most intriguing player that Scott coached because he's set to be a free agent. How would you guys feel about a guy like X? I don't know, Jalen's kind of a fan based on some interactions they've had on the field. Either way, I'd say it's a positive because more players are going to want to come play for this defense, not that they didn't really want to last season, but coaching makes more of an impact than I think some people realize. And despite the report from Drew Rosenhaus saying guys were upset with Fangio in Miami and didn't like his methods, Ron Jaworski disagreed with that notion, saying it's not a problem.
Coach is coach. And, I have connections as well around this league. And, I hear another side of that story, that there were some players on that defense that didn't want to work, didn't want to put the time in, didn't want to put the effort in, didn't want to make the commitment to be successful. Guys like to party at night, and, South Beach is a really great place to party. And Vic tried to get those guys and push those guys to become harder workers and better athletes and more committed to their team. And he couldn't get through to those guys. So those are the guys that Vic was pushing, and they're the guys that are whining right now.
Yeah, kind of what I was believing all along, but he's not the only guy backing up the DC, with three-time Pro Bowler Dante Whitner, who played for Fangio, saying he's a guy who's always going to put the players in the best spots to win while maximizing their abilities. Again, not surprising, and now we can go all in on draft prospects and free agents since we got our guy. But no, not like the Jerry Jones all in, saying they're going to forfeit the future to win now. And I would say good luck, except, just listen for yourself.
I think I said in the deal that we'd go as far as Dak takes us in the playoffs. Remember that?
Right. How do you
go as far as Dak takes us?
Right. How do you feel he played?
And that's how far we went.
Right. So
okay. So my point is that doesn't change a thing.
Okay.
We'll go as far as Dak takes us.
First off, thanks. Dak can keep being the guy because he ain't getting you anywhere. Oh, but good to know they're going to try after whatever the heck they've been doing for the past 30 years.
Basically, you make someone think the opposite of what you believe, and that tricks them into doing something stupid.
It's really just the gift that keeps on giving. And then there's also the positive news that Ben Johnson decided to stay in Detroit as offensive coordinator and won't entertain the Washington head coaching position. So I know we've got a lot to fix, but the division is definitely up for grabs. All right, reminder about the live stream tomorrow. We're going to break down all of the latest Senior Bowl coverage, but let me know who your favorite standouts are so far. This has been the Philly Special.